All right, burgeoning viewers, one quick note for you. A subscriber a day in October. If we hit 31 subscribers in 31 days, one lucky subscriber will walk away with the entire Modern Horizons art card series. Additionally, a comment a day. Any subscriber that leaves a comment in every video posted by MTG Burgeoning during the month of October will become eligible for the November Pack Wars. On November 1st, a list of all subscribers that left a comment on every MTG Burgeoning video during the month of October will be compiled, and from this list, one subscriber will be randomly chosen to participate in the November Pack Wars. So hope for peace, but prepare for war. MTG Burgeoning community and YouTube audience, thank you for coming back. Here we are on Commander EDH Thursday, and today we are going to examine a deck tech around Feather the Redeemed. Welcome back, everybody. MTG Burgeoning here, and we are going to look at a Boros EDH commander deck with our pilots, with our general, with our commander being Feather the Redeemed. This legendary angel from War of the Spark costs a red and 2 white. She's a 3/4 flyer. And whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature we control, exile that card instead of putting it into our graveyard as it resolves. If we do, we return that card to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. Feather the Redeemed is unlike any Boros creature in Magic's history, and it is a delight to bring to you this Feather the Redeemed EDH commander deck. So let's start with the mana base. So we're only in 2 colors, so we're going to be running a lot of basics. So here are our planes. 10 planes. Here's our mountains. 10 mountains, so 20 basics. The basics will comprise more than half of our land base in this deck, as they should. I mean, we're only running 2 colors. So the next stack of lands are going to be lands that can provide either white or red. And the first one, of course, is Command Tower, Sacred Foundry, Clifftop Retreat, Battlefield Forge, Rugged Prairie, Sun-Baked Canyon, Inspiring Vantage, Needle Spires, Temple of Triumph, Wind-Scarred Crag, and the Boros Guildgate. So that stack of lands provide either white or red. And to round out our land base, we have a few colorless lands that we're going to include. The first one is Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion. Taps for a colorless, or we can tap 2, a red and a white, and target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Notice that it says target creature and not target creature we control. So we can hit this on one of our opponent's creatures as well. Slayer's Stronghold taps for a colorless, a red and a white, and we tap it, and target creature gets +2/+0 and gains vigilance and haste until end of turn. We love you, Avacyn Restored. Rogue's Passage taps for a colorless, tap 4, tap it, target creature can't be blocked. So that's great for Feather if we're trying to swing in for lethal commander damage. That's great for one of our opponents or creatures that might be attacking one of our other opponents. Myriad Landscape comes into play tapped. Taps for a colorless. We can tap 2, tap it, and sacrifice it. And we can search our library for either 2 plains or 2 mountains and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Temple of the False God. Great land to not have in our opening hand. Tap to add 2 colorless or generic mana to our mana pool, whichever you prefer to label it, and we can only activate this ability if we control 5 lands, 5 or more lands. And the last land to complete our land base is a Reliquary Tower. Taps for a colorless, and we have no maximum hand size. with Feather's ability allowing us to return instant and sorcery spells from exile to our hand, having no maximum hand size will be very important in order to keep those spells in our hand and not in the graveyard. All right, so those are, or should I say, that is the land base. So next up, let's talk about some ramp spells that we have. Now, we're playing white-red, so we're in Boros, so there isn't going to be a ton we can do with traditional ramp spells, but there's a few things we can add here. Land tax. For 1 white, at the beginning of our upkeep, this enchantment says, if an opponent controls more lands than we do, we may search our library for up to 3 basic land cards, reveal them, and put them into our hand. So that's a good way. That's a great card to put out there in the early games. Of course, best artifact in the format, Soul Ring. Arcane Signet. Talisman of Conviction. Boros Signet. And lastly, we have an artifact version of Reliquary Tower with Thought Vessel. Remember, we don't want to discard those cards. We want to keep them in our hands, folks. And that is our artifact ramp. So now let's switch it and let's talk about some removal, because unfortunately our opponents are going to do what they can to either stop us or at least slow us down, and we want Feather to be able to do what she can do uninterrupted. So let's talk about some of the spells we've included in this deck to help keep our opponents, at arm's length. Swords to Plowshares, best creature removal spell in the format. For 1 whites, it's an instant. We exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. And who's been there where they've cast that spell on themselves? I have. If Swords to Plowshares is 1A, then Path to Exile is 1B. We exile target creature for the same cost as 1 white. Its controller may search their library for a basic land and put that card onto the battlefield tapped. Now, I'm not screaming for joy and, doing cartwheels about an opponent getting a free basic land out of this transaction. However, sometimes a creature is worth getting rid of in order to give your opponent an additional land. And, like Swords to Plowshares, we can cast Path to Exile on one of our own creatures. All right, next up we have Declaration in Stone, back to Shadows over Innistrad. We exile target creature and all other creatures it controls. Let me say that again. Exile target creature and all other creatures its controller controls with the same name as that creature. That player investigates for each non-token creature exiled this way. Mainly this is to wipe out a token army. I have not had the pleasure or the delight of casting this against like a Relentless Rats deck, or a Shadowborn Apostles, or Persistent Petitioners, or even Rat Colony. Maybe one day that will happen. Next up, we go into Dragon's Maze for Wear and Tear. Wear is 1 and a red to destroy target artifact, and Tear is 1 white to destroy target enchantment. And it has the Fuse mechanic, so we can cast either one or both of these halves. All right, what is your best Chaos Warp story? 2 and a red. This instant allows owner of target permanent to shuffle it into their library and then reveal the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. Tell me your Chaos Warp story in the comments section below. Next up, we have Oblation. Again, it's 2 and a white, so it's a CMC of 3, similar to Chaos Warp, and it's also an instant. The owner of target non-land permanent shuffles it into his or her library, then draws 2 cards. All right, moving right along, we have Return to Dust, 2 and 2 white. We can exile an artifact or enchantment, but if we cast this during our main phase, we may exile up to 1 other target artifact or enchantment. Exiling, better than destroy. Into the Core is 2 and 2 red and exiles 2 artifacts because, EDH players never have any troublesome artifacts on their battlefields, do they? Not that I can think of. All right. Here we go, baby. Wrath of God. 2 and double white. Destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. And our last piece of removal, Austere Command. 4 and double white. We get to pick 2 of the following 4 modes. We can destroy all artifacts. We can destroy all enchantments. We can destroy all creatures with a CMC of 3 or less, or we can destroy all creatures with a CMC 4 or greater. The versatility of Austere Command makes it very valuable to include in this deck and any other deck that's running white. Okay, so we went through the land base, we went through the artifact ramp, and we went through removal. Let's bring out the other creatures to the deck, and they are few and far between, but they all share a common similarity with Feather. So let's begin with the Crowan Crusader. He's just 1 white, he's just 1 red, and he's a 1/1, but he has the heroic mechanic, and whenever we cast a spell that targets him, we create a 1/1 red soldier creature token with haste. You will see that the creation of creature tokens is an ongoing theme here with the selection of these creatures. Next up we have Young Pyromancer for 1 and a red. It's a 2/1 human shaman, and whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we're going to create a 1/1 red elemental creature token. We have a lot of instants and sorcery spells. Creature number 3 is the Thermo Alchemist, going back to the days of Eldritch Moon. For 1 and a red, it's an 0/3 defender, but we can tap it to deal 1 damage to each opponent, and whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we untap Thermo Alchemist. Are you noticing the trend here, folks? Creature 4 for double white is the Phalanx Leader. It's a 1/1 human soldier, and it has the heroic mechanic similar to a Crowan Crusader. Whenever we cast a spell that targets Phalanx Leader, we put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. Next up, double white, creature number 5, Vanguard of Brimaz, a 2/2 cat soldier that has vigilance. It too has the heroic mechanic, and whenever we cast a spell that targets Vanguard of Brimaz, we create a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token with vigilance. Next up, creature number 6, Gutter Snipe, 2 and a red. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. Fate Reforged Mythic Rare here, we have Monastery Mentor, 2 and a white. It has the Prowess mechanic. Whenever we cast a non-creature spell, of which we have plenty, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and it's a 2/2 body. And whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we put a 1/1 white monk creature token with Prowess onto the battlefield. This creature in this deck is beyond bonkers. All right, that was creature number 7. We only have 3 more. We only have a total of 10 creatures in the 99. Next up, Anax and Samedi. Human soldier 3/2 has first strike, vigilance, and also has the heroic mechanic. Whenever we cast a spell that targets Anax and Samedi, creatures we control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Number 9. This goblin is, let's be honest, I'm just going to say, he's a commander and a half if you've ever piloted him or if you've ever played against him. Zada, Hedron Grinder. 3 and a red, it's a 3/3 legendary goblin ally. And whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada, we copy that spell for each other creature we control that spell could target. And each copy targets a different one of those creatures. Having Zada in play, along with Feather, it's like peanut butter and jelly, folks. I'm telling you, it's awesome. And our last creature number 10, we have the Mirrorwing Dragon. For 3 and double red, again going back to the days of Eldritch Moon, we have a 4/5 flying dragon. Come on, camera, get in the game here. There we go. A 4/5 flying dragon, and whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Mirrorwing Dragon, that player copies that spell for each other creature he or she controls that the spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. So as you can see, each one of the 10 creatures selected for this deck help to strengthen the focus of casting instant and sorcery spells to our creatures, for our creatures, revolving around our creatures, and then getting some additional benefits along the way. And all of these creatures working in tandem with Feather make for a very, very synergistic deck. All right, so how are we going to get these creatures in our hand if we're only drawing one every 9.9 cards if there's only 10 in the deck? Well, let's start rolling out some instants, and each one of these instants that we're going to show are all a draw card spell, but they offer something in addition. So let's start with a trip to Shadowmoor, and we have Niveus Wisps. It's only a white. Target creature becomes white until end of turn. Tap that creature, draw a card. So the first ability, not really anything special that we're going to be using or abusing. It's the drawing card mechanic or the drawing card ability that makes it so much more preferable. Defiant Strike. For 1 white, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Very, very modest power boost. However, draw a card. Next up, we have Bandage. Prevent the next 1 damage that will be dealt to target creature or player this turn. It says EDH commander. 1 damage, not going to really go too far, but drawing a card will, particularly if we're targeting Feather, and then the card goes back to our hand. Crimson Wisps is a red. Target creature becomes red and gains haste until end of turn. This is a bit more valuable, giving a creature haste, particularly if we're trying to swing in for the last few points of maybe some lethal commander damage. And of course, draw a card. Expedite. It's the same thing as Crimson Wisps minus the creature becoming red. Target creature gains haste, and we draw a card. Guided Strike is 1 and a white. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Draw a card. Shelter is one of the best instants that we have in this deck. Target creature we control gains protection from the color of our choice until end of turn. Draw a card. So Shelter can protect Feather from spot removal, and we can get the card back at end of turn and hopefully cast it again if needed later that round of turns. Carom, 1 and a white. The next 1 damage that will be dealt to target creature this turn is instead dealt to another target creature instead. Again, another meh ability for our format, but drawing a card is nice. Psychotic Fury, 1 and a red. Target multicolored creature gains double strike until end of turn, and we draw a card. So we'll lower this a little bit to put Feather in the background there, a little more prominent, as she is a multicolored creature, and getting double strike on her could be lights out for one of our opponents. And let's see, next up we have Accelerate. Target creature gains haste until end of turn, and then we draw a card. 1 and a red, straight from Torment. And the last instant that's going to let us draw cards, and this is a personal favorite of mine. It's a common from Modern Horizons. For 1 and a red, Fists of Flame. Draw a card. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +1/+0 for each card we've drawn this turn. So this spell, in conjunction with Zada, in conjunction with Mirrorwing Dragon, in conjunction with all of the other creatures that we have and the tokens that some of those creatures can create, this is a win condition card, folks. This 1 and a red instant common from Modern Horizons is a win condition. Amazing, amazing power. Fists of Flame. All right, so the next subset of instants are going to be our protection spells. Protection spells, yeah, I guess we can call them that. You'll see as we go through. So we have God's Willing. For 1 white, target creature we control gains protection from the color of our choice until end of turn, and we can scry 1. So we can give Feather some kind of protection, get to scry 1, and then have the card come back, bring it back to our hand at the beginning of the end step. All right, next up we have Sheltering Light. For just 1 white, target creature gains indestructible until end of turn, and we can scry 1. Again, for just 1 white, this time we have a Johnny's Presence, and it has the Strive mechanic, which allows us to tap 2 and a white for each target beyond the first. So any number of target creatures each get +1/+1 and gain indestructible until end of turn. So that's another way in which to protect Feather and any of our important creatures if there's a board wipe. Next we have Apostle's Blessing for 1 and a white Phyrexian mana, which means that we can either pay a white or pay 2 life. Target artifact or creature we control gains protection from artifacts or from the color of our choice until end of turn. No additional bonus there like a scry or anything like that, just a straight up protection spell. Valorous Stance is next. For 1 and a white, we get to pick 1. Target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Perfect way to protect Feather. Or we can destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. So there's an added layer of versatility to this spell because we can affect our opponent's board if we choose the second mode. All right, we're running Boros, we're running Protection, so it was only a matter of time until we talked about Boros Charm. For red and a white, we pick 1. Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player. Permanents we control gain indestructible till end of turn, or target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Clearly, the final 2 modes are the most valuable ones, particularly because 4 damage is, only 10% of a player's starting life total in our format, whereas in, modern or standard, that's the equivalent of casting shock, and I don't know how many shocks are being thrown around these days in those formats. All right, so Boros Charm is in. It is important to point out that Boros Charm would only come back to our hand if we choose the 3rd mode of Double Strike, targeting Feather. All right, so we have 3 more instant spells, and these instant spells, if we're running red, well, we got the ability to do some damage through combat and some damage directly. So let's start with Reckless Rage. For just 1 red, this amazing uncommon from Rivals of Ixalan deals 4 damage to target creature we don't control and 2 damage to target creature we control. So let's slowly bring this down to remind the audience what Feather's toughness is. It's 4. So for just 1 red, we target one of our opponent's creatures for 4 damage. Hopefully the toughness is 4 or less. The creature dies. The 2 damage that we have to do to one of our creatures is done to Feather. She survives. We get the card back at the end of the turn, and we get to do it again. Reckless Rage is an awesome card. Love that card. And next up we have Soul's Fire. 2 and a red. This instance says target creature we control in play deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. This will most likely be Feather, because there are some spells in our deck that are going to increase her power and toughness to Voltron-like levels. And the last instant that we have that can be used to target creatures we control, Invigorated Rampage. This is a great one from Ether Revolt. 1 and a red instant, we get to pick one of the following 2 modes. Target creature gets +4/+0 and gains trample until end of turn, or 2 target creatures each get +2/+0 and gain trample until end of turn. And if we have Zada in play, you better believe we're choosing mode number 1. Invigorated Rampage, an awesome card. All right, so now let's talk about some of our, how would we label the following spells? Let's call this next subset of spells our advantage spells. Card advantage, maybe some ramp. Yeah, we'll say our advantage spells. First one up is Enlightened Tutor. For just a white, we search our library for an artifact or enchantment card, reveal it to all players, shuffle our library, and put that card back on top of it. Having Enlightened Tutor in the deck is important because we have numerous artifact and enchantment win conditions that are included in this deck that will help us take advantage of our focused theme of instant and sorcery spells. You did notice earlier during the showcase of our 10 creatures how many of them created creature tokens, right? And you did realize how many of them were 1/1 tokens, right? I think you can see where we're going with this. Skull Clamp. 1 to cast, 1 to equip. Equip creature gets +1/-1. And when equip creature dies, we draw 2 cards. So for the purposes of this deck, this spell should read, attach Skull Clamp to one of our token creatures, draw 2 cards when the creature dies. All right. Next up, with the number of red and white instants and sorcery spells we have included in this deck, it only seemed like it was inevitable before we pulled out a Sunforger. Artifact that costs 3, and to equip it's 3. Equip creature gets +4/+0, which sometimes that part of this equipment is overlooked. And for Feather, who has evasion, she can carry this Sunforger right to lethal commander damage. But the real reason Sunforger is so popular, of course, is because for red and a white, we can unattach Sunforger, search our library for a red or white instant card with converted mana cost 4 or less, and cast that card without paying its mana cost. I aired earlier, just a moment ago, when I was talking about instant and sorceries with respect to Sunforger. Sunforger is just instants, not sorceries. So that was my error and my mistake. All right, next up, we're going to Ixalan Primal Amulet. For 4, we get an artifact that's instant and sorcery spells we cast cost 1 less to cast. And whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we can put a charge counter on Primal Amulet. Then if there are 4 more charge counters on it, we may remove those counters and transform it. And when we transform Primal Amulet, it transforms into the Primal Wellspring, which is a land that we can tap for 1 mana of any color, and if that mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, we can copy that spell, and we may choose new targets for the copy. So many of our instants in this deck are only 1 CMC, but there are also a number that are 2 and a couple that are 3. So the reduction for the instant and sorcery spells we cast, that is favorable. Being able to copy a spell, oh, that's even better. And our last advantage card, Smothering Tithe. 3 and a white. Whenever an opponent draws a card, we ask that player, are you going to pay 2? You're going to pay 2? And if the player doesn't, we get a treasure. You're going to pay 2 for that? You're going to pay 2 for that? All right, and we are winding down the deck here. There are not many spells left for us to talk about. So let's move past. We finished our quote-unquote advantage spells. Now, let's get into some of our win conditions that are not necessarily feather dependent, but, well, you tell me what you would classify this stack of win conditions. Myth Realized. For 1 white, we have an enchantment that whenever we cast a non-creature spell, this gets a lore counter. Plus, we can tap 2 and a white and put a lore counter on this. We can tap just a white, and until end of turn, Myth Realized becomes a monk avatar creature in addition to its other types and gains. This creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lore counters on it. You saw the number of instant and sorcery spells already included in this deck. Myth Realized can become very immense. Another win condition, Underworld Breach, Theros Beyond Death. For 1 and a red, it's an enchantment. Each non-land card in our graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exiling 3 other cards from our graveyard. Okay, and at the beginning of the end step, we sacrifice Underworld Breach. So it's a one-shot for us. We got 1 turn to make Underworld Breach the most important card that we can play. 1 shot, folks, but we can do it. We got this, baby. Scroll of the Masters is an artifact from Fate Reforged. Costs 2 to play, and whenever we cast a non-creature spell, this gets a lore counter on it. We can tap 3 and tap this, and target creature we control gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each lore counter on Scroll of the Masters. This is great to pair with Feather. Her evasion makes her a threat to deal lethal commander damage to our opponents, and tapping the Scroll of the Masters allows her power and toughness to get way up there and do the job even quicker. This next card is one of my personal favorites from Modern Horizons, and I'm a little surprised it hasn't caught on yet. So maybe we just keep this card a secret between us here at the MTG Burgeoning community. But here we have Aria of Flame. 2 and a red. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent gains 10 life. That may be the biggest detractor of this spell, because if we can get past those 2 sentences, the following wall of text is just amazing. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we put a verse counter on Aria of Flame, and then it deals damage equal to the number of verse counters on it to target player or planeswalker. If our Feather engine is revving like I intend it to, and I've seen it rev in the past, Aria of Flame is a very, very dangerous win condition. The number of spells that we could cast in a round of turns and activating Aria of Flame, I've done it. I've seen it. I'm telling you, Aria of Flame is an amazing card. In this deck, it is an amazing card. Next up, we have Seize the Day. 3 and a red, untapped target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. And we can flash this back for 2 and a red. Again, Feather. All right. And another one of our major win conditions, the Aetherflux Reservoir. Whenever we cast a spell, we gain 1 life for each spell we've cast this turn. Pay 50 life, and we deal 50 damage to target creature or player. And we are able to cast tons of spells, and activating Aetherflux Reservoir is not burdensome at all. And our last win condition of this deck, Chandra's Ignition. 3 and double red, target creature we control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So when we get Feather big enough, and we want to clear the board and clear out some opponents, we cast Chandra's Ignition, bring Chandra's Ignition right back to our hand at the end of turn. Good things. Those are good things. All right. So, folks, that's our Feather the Redeemed Commander, and that is 95 out of our 99. So we've only got 4 cards left, and these 4 cards are included to help give Feather some more protection and some more abilities to deal damage. So let's start with the unbelievably versatile and very, very underutilized Dawn Charm. 1 and a white, we can pick one of the following 3 modes. We Fog, by preventing all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. We regenerate target creature, which most likely would be Feather, because then we would get the spell back, or we counter spell that targets us. Why Dawn Charm is not played more, I don't have an answer for that. I know there's a general disdain for white within the community, but come on, there are enough powerful white cards for Dawn Charm to be seeing much more play. Next up, number 97, we have Swiftfoot Boots. For 2 to cast and 1 to equip, equipped creature has hexproof and haste. For the purposes of this deck, folks, hexproof is greater than Shroud. Not having Lightning Greaves is on purpose, because if we slap Lightning Greaves on Feather, well, why would we do that? All right, card number 98 is another equipment. This one is called the Livewire Lash. Back to the days of Scars of Mirrodin, costs 2 to cast and 2 to equip. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has, whenever this creature becomes a target of a spell, this creature deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So the +2 is great to have Feather. Again, Voltron commander damage. But targeting the creature that this is equipped to have a shock, well, that's pretty nice too. Those babies can add up. And last, card number 99 in the 99, and one card that is another one that is not, it hasn't been reprinted. So you tell me what you think of Veilstone Amulet. It only costs 3, and whenever we play a spell, creatures we control can't be the target of spells or abilities our opponents control this turn, which, for all intents and purposes, because it hadn't been keyworded at the time, whenever we cast a spell, creatures we control have hexproof. And with the number of instants we have on this spell, we should always be able to protect our creatures if Veilstone Amulet is in play. Very, very powerful this artifact is. Future Sight, never been reprinted, but Veilstone Amulet is one of the most important cards in this deck to help keep our creatures from being targeted. And there you have it, folks. There you have MTG Burgeoning's Feather the Redeemed EDH Commander deck. Let me know in the comment sections what you think. This is a much, much different version from most other Boros builds because Feather is our leader. She's our general. She pilots this deck, and it does still have some touches of the Boros archetype, but by no means is this a traditional Boros commander deck. Give me a shout out in the comments. Let me know what you think. This is MTG Burgeoning, folks. Commander Thursday. Go forth and enjoy your day. Want to become a Pack Wars combatant? 4 easy steps. Step number 1. Click on the link below in the description or go to www.buymeacoffee.com/MTGBurgeoning. Step number 2. Select either membership or support. Membership will enroll you into Pack Wars for $5 each month. Support will cost $5 for 1 month. Step number 3, complete payment information. The name you use will appear on the site. Use your real name, use your YouTube handle, or use no name at all and be anonymous. Be sure to include your email address in the information. Step number 4, most importantly, prepare for war.